I'm dialoguing with Jen Fisher, Deloitte's first Chief Wellbeing Officer, a leading voice on the workplace well-being and creating human-centered organizational cultures. Jen is also Life Work Integration Editor-at-Large for Thrive Global, creator and host of Work Well podcast, and co-author of the best-selling book Work Better Together. Thank you very much, Jen, to agree for this interview. So, you became the first Chief Wellbeing Officer in Deloitte, but what does exactly means Chief Wellbeing Officer, and what does someone in your role will do? Can you please share with us?
It's a great question. I think since I started in the role 8 years ago, it's changed dramatically. But what do I do? I mean, essentially, I'm responsible for setting the strategy around what health and well-being means for 170,000 people in the US firm at Deloitte. And so that's everything from what does it look like in our culture? How do we embed it into our day-to-day work? What are the programs, tools, and resources that we're going to provide for our people? What does training look like for our leaders? So it really is across the board. And when I think about the evolution of well-being and where I started, there was a lot of focus on things like nutrition and getting enough sleep and teaching people about movement and exercise and all of those things that have to do with our personal wellness that are still incredibly important for all of us. But it's really now evolved to kind of well-being as this shared responsibility, and what's the role of the organization, and how do we look at the way that work is designed for our people, the barriers that stand in the way of people getting good work done. What do relationships with our colleagues and our leaders look like, and how are those impacting people's well-being? And so the expansion of what workplace well-being is kind of just continues to grow, honestly. But really now we're looking at what the redesign of work. We've been working the same way essentially for 100 years, other than having technology coming onto the scene. We're still working the same way we did 100 years ago. And the workforce is, quite frankly, demanding something different.
Yeah, very clear, thank you. So in your book, you're making quite bold statement, right? Yeah, your book, Work Better Together, with your co-author, you paint a bleak picture of the workplace. So for instance, you're saying something like, if social psychologists invented a global experiment to determine human capacity for surviving paradox, you'll come up with something resembling the modern workplace. For instance, we're more connected than ever, and yet loneliness is epidemic. We're rich in information, but deciding what to do with that information is more difficult than ever. Mm-hmm. We're achieving more from our dashboard than ever, and yet we're physically and mentally exhausted. Why you come up with these points?
Yeah, I mean, I think that points to, there's a lot of benefits to the modern workplace and the introduction of technology. And I'm not a technology hater. Actually, my co-author is a technology researcher, so I just want to put it out there. But I think where we've evolved to is that technology is present in every aspect of our life, and especially in our work lives. And we've adopted technology into every aspect of our life faster than we've done anything in human history. I mean, think about that. That's, an amazing statistic. But we haven't adapted to it very well. And so in my simple terms, I would say the technology is using us. We're not using the technology. And so it's not that the technology is good or bad. It's just that we as humans need to use the technology better. And so yes, we are more connected. We have more access to information. But what that points to is that true human connection can never be replaced. And it was fascinating when we were writing the book, because we started writing the book before the COVID-19 pandemic. And then about 3 months into writing it, the pandemic hit. And so my co-author and I largely wrote the book never being in person with one another. And here we are writing a book about how technology has impacted our ability to develop relationships in the workplace. And all we had was keeping us connected was technology. So that certainly influenced some of our writing and some of our thinking to say that, it's great that we have access to all of this information, but as human beings, we're not doing a very good job of using that technology, and we have to be really mindful of how we're using it. I mean, a great example is, when we are co-located in an office, we've become lazy, right? We send somebody an instant message to ask them to do something versus getting up and walking down the hall and looking somebody in the eye, right? And so work in many ways, even though we might be in the same space, has become very transactional and much less about getting to know someone and actually having a relationship with them, which makes us feel better, which makes our work better. And that's why we call it Work Better Together.
Cannot agree more. Thank you. Very good. So, like many things, the concept of well-being in the workplace, of course, but also I think outside, is something that is, dynamic by definition. What is your view on this one? What are the things that, in your opinion, have changed in the recent years? What especially is the pandemic factor, impact you mentioned, your experience during the writing of the book. What do people need from the workplace to be happy today?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I don't know that we fully know that answer because it is dynamic and it does continue to evolve and change, I think, as our needs as humans change, right? And because of our experience with the global pandemic, I think a lot of people are reevaluating what well-being means. I mean, the truth is that everything in our lives impacts our well-being. Some of it's negative and some of it's positive. It's not all bad. That's what we hear about in the news, but it's not all bad, right? And so, but I think what the desire is for the workplace is, look, work is not a bad thing, right? Work is good for us. It challenges us. It helps us grow. We need to work, and stress is not a bad thing. Chronic stress is a bad thing. But again, stress, people go to the gym. They stress their muscles because they want their muscles to get bigger. But so I think what people are looking for is for work to enhance their well-being, right? To be a positive input to their well-being. And I think in large part for many people, it feels like a detractor to their well-being for many reasons. And it shouldn't. There's a lot of great things about work, right? Learn, grow, make money, to live, to do the things that bring us joy and happiness, right? And so there's many things about the modern workplace that need to change. But again, it's not all bad. And I'm not a pessimist. I think that there's a lot that we can do and there's a lot of opportunity here. But I think we need to look at work and the workplace as how do we make work something that is a positive input to people's well-being.
Yeah. Let's be more specific. Both were working for large multinational, okay? So given your perspective after a few years of doing the job, what do you think are the systemic solutions, the things that you would consider already like best practices that you would suggest to your clients?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is leadership behavior and leadership accountability. I think we need clarity around what a skill set for leaders means when you're talking about leading for well-being. I think well-being needs to be a leadership skill set. It's something that we need to hold people accountable for. So sometimes that means making it part of your performance management, because we've heard from other experts here at the World Happiness Summit, what you measure, you treasure. So that truly does change behavior. And when I say leader, I mean C-suite and every leader in an organization. If you lead people, in my mind, you're a leader. And we know that the person that has the biggest impact on somebody's well-being in an organization is their direct boss. And so everybody needs to be considered when we're talking about systemic change and behavior change.
In your book, Work Better Together, you argue, and sorry for the extreme simplification, that the fundamental core of well-being in the workplace is the relationship that will build, in the context. How do you think that today's leader can foster the creation of better and more meaningful connection among employees?
Yeah, so we talk about this in the book as trusted teams, and it's leaders and teams that prioritize both relationships and well-being. Yeah. It starts with individual well-being, encouraging and creating an environment where everybody feels permissioned to take care of themselves, and that may look different for everyone, but that we all are in an environment where we can ask for what we need, and we feel supported. that leads to team well-being, right? The collective. If I get supported by my teammates, I'm more likely to also support them. And then we have to, especially in today's environment where time is money, right? We have to, as leaders, carve out the time to allow people to build relationships, especially if we're working remotely or hybrid. People need to be able to have that time to come together. I don't think that there is ever any future workplace where we never come together as human beings. I think that that's the absolute wrong answer. And so prioritizing relationships, especially if we're not co-located together all the time, and carving out real time for that, because when you do that, it's almost like, and I know many in your workforce come to co-location every single day, and so that that's actually great, right? Because they're almost you're going to develop relationships for that way. But for people that don't, it's almost like when you go into an office, the office is meant for relationship building, and that creates, when you're not together, a better ability for us to work back, because we know each other as human beings. When you know someone as a human being, it's human nature to care, right? When you don't and you're behind a screen all day, it's very easy not to care.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So, going back to technology, maybe there is a lot to talk about artificial intelligence, the metaverse, the dynamic of remote work. It seems to me that the relationship with technology that we develop is becoming increasingly capable to define how we work, and that are determining potentially also our well-being. How do you think we should implement new technologies that we are developing, that will be developed in the future, so they are not harmful or well-being, but actually helping well-being?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think when we talk about upskilling or reskilling the workforce, the focus needs to be on truly human skills, so social and emotional skills, which includes learning how to work with AI and potentially robots, right? So other workers or parts of the workforce that aren't human beings. And so I think that we need to really focus on things that have historically been called soft skills. I don't think they're soft skills. I think they are essential skills, essential human skills. So, complex problem solving, relationship building, creativity, any type of social and emotional skill is really, I think, the skill of the future, and how we as humans are going to work well with our technology. And I think that is absolutely we can do this, right? Yeah. And I think that it really elevates the workforce, because it's going to allow the workforce to do much more meaningful work. And so I know there's a lot of fear around it, but if done correctly and implemented correctly, it should actually make work better for all of us.
Yeah. Thank you. So, Jen, we are both here at this World Happiness Summit. So let me ask you this. When is the last time you've been happy?
This morning when I finished my speech and walked off stage, and you were there and you gave me an amazing hug. That made me very happy.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Jen. Thank you for this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very
absolutely.
much. Really a pleasure.